The morning sun had barely climbed above the rooftops of Washington, D.C., when Maya Carter pushed her bicycle onto the quiet neighborhood street. The city was still waking. Coffee shops unlocked their doors. Delivery trucks rumbled through narrow intersections. Joggers moved along tree-lined sidewalks, while the scent of fresh rain lingered in the cool spring air. Maya adjusted the strap of the faded gray backpack resting across her shoulders and smiled as she began pedaling toward the Eastwood Community Center. It was the same route she had taken almost every weekday for 3 years. She could have driven. She owned a reliable SUV parked in her apartment garage, but she preferred riding her bicycle. It reminded her to slow down, to notice people, to greet the elderly man who swept the sidewalk outside his bakery every morning, to wave at the elementary school crossing guard who always smiled before children filled the streets. Life felt different on a bicycle. More honest. More connected. At 32, Maya carried herself with quiet confidence. Her athletic build reflected years of military discipline. Her shoulder-length natural curls moved gently beneath her matte black bicycle helmet as the cool breeze brushed across her face. She wore dark athletic leggings, a navy windbreaker, white sneakers, and no jewelry except a simple silver bracelet engraved with a single word: honor. No one passing her on the street could have guessed she had once worn the rank of captain in the United States Army. That was exactly how she preferred it. Her past belonged to service. Her present belonged to helping others. As she approached Jefferson Avenue, she noticed several children waiting outside the community center. One little girl recognized her immediately. "Miss Maya." Maya laughed and lifted one hand from the handlebars. "Good morning, Sophie. Don't forget our race today." "I wouldn't miss it." The little girl giggled. "You always let me win." Maya winked. "That's classified information." The children burst into laughter. For a brief moment, the entire street felt lighter. Then everything changed. Behind her, the sharp sound of a police siren echoed through the morning traffic. One short burst, then another. Maya glanced into her rearview mirror. A patrol SUV pulled alongside the bike lane. Its emergency lights flashed silently. The driver lowered his window. "Ma'am." Maya immediately slowed her bicycle and carefully pulled onto the sidewalk. She never ignored emergency vehicles. Old habits from military life never disappeared. 2 officers stepped out. Officer Ryan Miller looked no older than 30. Officer Ethan Cole followed beside him, carrying a small electronic tablet. Ryan spoke first. "Morning. Would you mind stepping away from the bicycle?" Maya nodded politely. "Of course." She leaned the bicycle against a nearby bench and removed her helmet. "Is something wrong, officers?" Ryan exchanged a quick glance with Ethan. "We received a report about someone matching your description riding through this area." Maya remained calm. "What kind of report?" Ethan answered. "We're still confirming the details. We just need to ask you a few questions." Several pedestrians slowed as they walked past. A woman walking her dog stopped across the street. A delivery driver remained inside his truck, watching through the windshield. Another passerby quietly lifted a phone and began recording. Maya noticed the camera. She ignored it. Ryan pointed toward her backpack. "Is there anything inside we should know about?" "Training equipment, first aid supplies, and sports equipment for the kids." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You work with children?" "I volunteer every morning." Ethan looked toward the bicycle. "It's an older model." Maya smiled. "It still gets me where I need to go." Ryan wasn't smiling. "Can we see some identification?" "Certainly." Maya spoke with the same composed tone she had used throughout the conversation. "May I reach into my backpack?" Ryan nodded. Slowly. She carefully knelt beside the backpack, unzipped the front pocket, and reached inside. Before she could remove her wallet, Ryan suddenly noticed a dark fabric pouch tucked beneath a folded jacket. His expression hardened. "Stop." Maya immediately froze. Ryan placed one hand near his duty belt. "What exactly is in that pouch?" The small crowd fell. Completely silent. The phone recording the scene moved closer. Maya slowly looked up at the officers, then quietly answered, "Officer, I think you're about to discover something you weren't expecting." Long before anyone questioned Maya Carter beside a bicycle lane in Washington, D.C., she had learned that appearances rarely told the truth. Her life had never followed the path people imagined when they looked at her. At 32, Maya possessed the kind of effortless beauty that often drew attention before she ever spoke. Her warm brown eyes carried a quiet confidence, framed by shoulder-length natural curls that danced whenever the wind caught them. Her smile was genuine but reserved, offered freely to children and strangers, yet never used to demand attention. People often assumed she was a fitness instructor, a graduate student, sometimes even a fashion model riding her bicycle through the city for exercise. No one ever guessed the truth. 10 years earlier, Maya had stood in a very different uniform. Fresh out of college, she had chosen the United States Army instead of accepting a comfortable corporate job. Her parents had been surprised. "You've worked so hard," her mother had said. "You don't have to prove anything." Maya had smiled gently. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I just want my life to matter." Military life changed her. Not by making her harder, by teaching her how to remain calm when everyone else panicked. She learned that true courage rarely looked dramatic. Sometimes courage meant carrying a wounded teammate across dangerous ground. Sometimes it meant making impossible decisions with only seconds to think. Sometimes it simply meant staying kind after witnessing the worst parts of humanity. During 10 years of service, Maya completed multiple humanitarian deployments, disaster relief missions, and emergency rescue operations. She earned commendations not because she sought recognition, but because she consistently placed other people's safety ahead of her own. When younger soldiers struggled, she stayed behind after training to help them improve. When civilians needed assistance after hurricanes and floods, she volunteered for the longest shifts. Her commanding officers respected her. Her teammates trusted her. Eventually, she earned the rank of captain. The promotion ceremony lasted less than 15 minutes. Maya spent more time afterward congratulating the soldiers who had supported her than celebrating herself. That was simply who she was. When she left the army 2 years earlier, many people expected her to pursue a lucrative career in private security or corporate consulting. The offers came quickly. Some promised six-figure salaries. Others offered international travel and executive positions. She politely declined every one. Instead, she accepted a modest position coordinating youth leadership programs at the Eastwood Community Center. Her friends thought she was making a mistake. "You could be earning 5 times as much." Maya only smiled. "I already know what enough looks like." Every weekday morning, she rode the same aging blue bicycle through the city. She owned a dependable SUV, but it remained parked most days. The bicycle reminded her where she came from. It kept her close to the neighborhoods she served. Children recognized her long before adults did. To them, she wasn't Captain Carter. She was simply Miss Maya, the woman who taught confidence instead of fear, who organized weekend cycling clubs, who carried spare water bottles during the summer, who remembered birthdays without needing reminders. Inside the faded gray backpack resting on her shoulders were soccer balls, first aid supplies, healthy snacks, and notebooks filled with leadership exercises she had written herself. Nothing expensive, nothing remarkable. Yet everything inside had a purpose. She believed people revealed their character through small daily choices rather than grand speeches. That same belief guided every part of her life. It was also the reason she remained completely calm when officers Ryan Miller and Ethan Cole stopped her that morning. She wasn't afraid of authority. She respected it. She had worn a uniform herself. She understood responsibility. What she didn't understand was why 2 young officers looked at an old bicycle, a simple backpack, and a young black woman, and seemed to see suspicion before they saw a person. Standing quietly on the sidewalk, Maya waited patiently as the questions continued. She had faced far greater dangers than an uncomfortable conversation. What she didn't know was that the next few minutes would test not only the officer's judgment, but everything she had spent 10 years learning about honor, discipline, and grace. The quiet intersection no longer sounded like an ordinary Tuesday morning. The laughter of children outside the Eastwood Community Center had faded into silence. Passing cars slowed as drivers glanced toward the flashing patrol lights. A city bus stopped at the corner, its passengers leaning toward the windows, trying to understand why two police officers had surrounded a young woman standing beside an old bicycle. Maya Carter remained exactly where Officer Ryan Miller had asked her to stand. Her hands rested calmly at her sides. Her breathing never changed. Years of military service had taught her that panic spread faster than truth. The calmer one person remained, the calmer everyone else became. Officer Ryan kept his eyes fixed on the small black fabric pouch inside Maya's backpack. "What is it?" he asked again. Maya answered without hesitation. "A medical kit." Ryan wasn't convinced. "I'd like to inspect it." "Of course." She slowly stepped backward, creating more space between herself and the backpack. "You can open it yourself." Officer Ethan Cole knelt beside the bicycle and carefully unzipped the bag. Inside were neatly organized supplies: sterile bandages, tourniquets, medical gloves, emergency trauma dressings, a compact CPR mask. Everything was arranged with remarkable precision. Ethan frowned. "This isn't an ordinary first aid kit." "No," Maya replied calmly. "It isn't." Ryan crossed his arms. Why would a community volunteer carry military-grade medical equipment? Maya smiled politely. "Because emergencies don't wait for ambulances." The answer caught Ryan off guard. Before he could respond, Ethan continued searching. He removed a whistle, several soccer cones, 2 tennis balls, children's notebooks, protein bars, a small teddy bear. Ryan looked confused. "A teddy bear?" Maya nodded. "For frightened children." Silence settled briefly between them. The image didn't match the suspicion forming inside Ryan's mind. He looked at Maya again. She appeared athletic, disciplined, confident. Yet nothing about her suggested danger. Still, something about her composure unsettled him. Most people stopped by police displayed nervous habits. They spoke too. Quickly. They argued. They apologized repeatedly. Maya did none of those things. She answered every question directly. She maintained steady eye contact. She never interrupted. She never became defensive. It almost felt professional. Ryan asked another question. "You seem unusually calm." Maya gave a small smile. "I've practiced staying calm." "You practice?" She nodded. "For many years." Ryan noticed the silver bracelet around her wrist. One word had been engraved into the metal. "Honor." He pointed toward it. "Military family?" Maya glanced down briefly. "You could say that." Before Ryan could ask another question, a loud crash echoed from the opposite side of the intersection. A delivery van had clipped a trash container while turning too sharply. Metal cans rolled across the street. A frightened mother pulling a stroller instinctively stepped backward. A young boy, no older than 6, broke free from her hand. He ran directly toward the bicycle lane. At the same moment, another SUV entered the intersection. The driver couldn't see the child. Everything happened within seconds. Ryan shouted, "Stop!" The mother screamed. The child froze. Without thinking, Maya moved. Her bicycle helmet dropped onto the sidewalk as she sprinted forward with astonishing speed. Years of disciplined training returned without conscious thought. She judged the vehicle's speed, calculated the distance, reached the child in 3 long strides. Wrapping one arm around the little boy, she rotated her body and carried him safely onto the sidewalk just as the SUV rushed past. The vehicle's brakes screamed. Wind whipped through Maya's curls. Then, silence. The child began crying. Maya immediately knelt beside him. "You're all right." She checked his arms, his legs, his breathing. Only after confirming he was completely unharmed did she look toward his terrified mother. "He's okay." The woman burst into tears. She pulled her son into a tight embrace. "Thank you." "Oh my God, thank you." Ryan and Ethan stood frozen. Neither officer had reached the child in time. Maya had. Not because she acted recklessly. Because every movement had been controlled, measured, instinctive. Ryan, slowly walked toward her. His voice sounded different now. Where did you learn to move like that? Maya gently picked up her bicycle helmet and brushed away the dust. She looked at him with the same calm expression she had worn all morning. Then she quietly answered, "Some lessons stay with you long after you've taken off the uniform." Neither officer fully understood what she meant. But for the first time that morning, they realized the young woman standing before them was someone they had never truly seen. For several long seconds, no one moved. The intersection, so loud only moments before, had fallen into complete silence. Even the morning traffic seemed to pause as people processed what they had just witnessed. The little boy clung tightly to his mother, crying against her shoulder. His mother looked toward Maya Carter with trembling eyes. I don't know how to thank you." Maya offered a gentle smile. "You already have." She reached down, picked up the child's small blue baseball cap from the pavement, brushed away the dust, and handed it back to him. The little boy sniffled. "Thank you, Mississippi." Maya crouched to his eye level. "Next time, stay close to your mom, all right?" He nodded seriously. "I will." She smiled. "Good." The boy wrapped his tiny arms around her without warning. The crowd watching from across the street quietly applauded. It wasn't loud. Just a few people. Then more joined. Not because Maya had performed some impossible feat, but because they had witnessed someone risk herself without hesitation for a complete stranger. Officer Ethan Cole slowly closed Maya's backpack. His expression had changed completely. Everything inside the bag suddenly made sense. The trauma kit, the emergency supplies, the organized equipment. Nothing about it looked suspicious anymore. It looked professional. Ryan Miller remained unusually quiet. He replayed the last few seconds in his mind. Most people would have frozen. Others might have shouted. Maya had done neither. She assessed, moved, protected, exactly as though she had practiced that moment hundreds of times before. He walked toward her. "You could have been hurt." Maya slipped her helmet back onto the handlebars of her bicycle. "I've accepted that possibility before." Ryan studied her face. "You talk differently than most people." She laughed softly. "I've been told that." Before he could continue, the little boy's mother approached again. "My name is Emily." She extended her hand. "Maya." Emily smiled through tears. "I'll never forget what you did." Maya gently shook her head. "If you really want to thank me." Emily waited. "Teach him to help someone else one day." Emily looked down at her son. "I promise." The simple conversation settled over everyone nearby. An elderly man standing outside the bakery quietly removed his hat. A teenager who had been recording lowered his phone. Even the children waiting outside the community center stared at Maya with admiration. Officer Ethan finally broke the silence. "Miss Carter, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Were you military?" Maya hesitated for only a moment, then smiled politely. "Yes." Ryan immediately asked, "Army?" She nodded. "For 10 years. Neither officer spoke. Ryan suddenly remembered the confidence, the posture, the way she requested permission before reaching into her backpack, the precision with which every item had been packed, the calm voice, the disciplined movements. It had all been there from the beginning. He simply hadn't recognized it. At that moment, another patrol vehicle pulled to the curb. A black police SUV. The driver's door opened. Captain James Walker stepped onto the sidewalk. A respected precinct commander with nearly 30 years of law enforcement experience. He had been nearby when dispatch informed him that a traffic stop had unexpectedly drawn a crowd. As he approached, Ryan immediately greeted him. "Captain." Walker nodded. "What do we have?" Ryan began explaining. "Routine stop. Possible suspicious activity." "Then she saved a child." Walker looked toward Maya. His sentence stopped halfway. Recognition spread across his face almost instantly. He took another step forward. His eyes widened. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." Maya turned toward the approaching commander. For a second, she looked puzzled. Then she smiled. "Captain Walker." Walker removed his patrol cap without hesitation. He extended his hand with unmistakable respect. Captain Carter. I never thought I'd see you again. Ryan and Ethan looked back and forth between them. Neither officer understood. Walker noticed their confusion. He looked at Maya, then quietly asked, "Do they know who you are?" Maya smiled with characteristic humility. "They know enough." Walker shook his head gently. "No, I don't think they do." Ryan suddenly felt an uncomfortable knot tighten in his stomach. The young woman he had judged because of an old bicycle was clearly someone his own commanding officer respected deeply. And he had the growing feeling he was only beginning to discover why. The atmosphere at Jefferson Avenue had changed completely. Only 15 minutes earlier, people had watched with quiet suspicion as two police officers questioned a young black woman riding an old bicycle. Now, the same crowd stood in complete silence. Not because of fear, because curiosity had replaced judgment. Officer Ryan Miller couldn't take his eyes off Captain James Walker. In nearly 3 years of serving under the veteran commander, Ryan had never seen him remove his patrol cap for anyone outside a military funeral. Yet the moment he recognized Maya Carter, he had done exactly that. Walker stepped toward Maya with a warm smile. "It's been far too long, Captain." Maya returned the smile. "It certainly has. I heard you retired." "I did. And now you ride bicycles instead of military vehicles?" She laughed softly. "It's much quieter." Several people nearby smiled. The conversation felt less like two strangers meeting, and more like old comrades crossing paths again. Ryan finally spoke. "Captain, you know Miss Carter?" Walker turned toward him. "Know her?" He looked back at Maya. "I served alongside officers who were trained by her." Ryan blinked. "Trained?" Walker nodded. "Leadership workshops. Emergency response. Crisis management." Captain Carter was one of the finest instructors the Army ever produced. Ryan looked at Maya, then at the worn bicycle, then back at Maya. Nothing about the picture fit together. Walker noticed the confusion on both young officers' faces. "What happened here?" Ryan explained everything honestly. "The call came in. We stopped her. We searched the backpack. Then she saved that little boy." Walker listened without interruption. When Ryan finished, the older commander slowly nodded. "You followed procedure." Ryan felt slightly relieved. Then Walker continued. "But procedure means nothing if we stop seeing people." The words landed heavily. No one spoke. Walker turned back toward Maya. "May I?" He gestured toward her wallet. She handed it to him without hesitation. Inside were neatly arranged identification cards, a driver's license, a volunteer badge, a veteran identification card. Then, Walker carefully unfolded a slim leather credential holder. Inside rested an old military identification card. Beneath it, a photograph. Maya stood in Army dress uniform. Captain's bar shone brightly on her shoulders. Several colorful ribbons decorated her chest. Ryan quietly leaned closer. Walker smiled. "Still carrying this?" Maya shrugged. "It reminds me where I learned my greatest lessons." Walker removed something else from the wallet. A bronze challenge coin. Its engraved insignia immediately caught Ethan's attention. "I've seen one of those before." Walker nodded. "You don't receive this for ordinary service." Ryan frowned. "What is it?" Walker held the coin carefully in his palm. This was awarded after Captain Carter coordinated civilian evacuations during an overseas humanitarian mission. More than 60 families made it to safety. No casualties. The small crowd fell silent again. A woman standing near the bakery quietly covered her mouth. The teenager who had been recording lowered his phone completely. Walker continued. "She never asked for recognition. In fact," he smiled toward Maya, "she tried to avoid the ceremony." Maya laughed quietly. "I was hoping they'd forget." They didn't. Ryan felt his face growing warm. Everything he thought he understood that morning was unraveling. He remembered questioning the first aid kit, questioning the backpack, questioning the bicycle, questioning her calm. Each answer had been sitting in front of him the entire time. He simply hadn't recognized it. Just then, an elderly man slowly approached from the crowd. He looked carefully at Maya before smiling. I knew I recognized you. Maya tilted her head. We met 3 years ago. My wife collapsed during the Veterans Day parade. Recognition crossed Maya's face. Oh, Mrs. Henderson. The man nodded. You stayed with her until the ambulance arrived. You even visited her in the hospital. Maya smiled warmly. How is she? She's wonderful. He paused. And she still talks about the young army captain who refused to leave her side. Walker looked toward Ryan. You see, character leaves footprints long before titles do. Ryan lowered his eyes. He realized something painful. When he first saw Maya, he noticed the bicycle, the backpack, her appearance. He never noticed her character. Maya quietly closed her wallet and slipped it back into her backpack. She smiled exactly as she had from the beginning. No pride, no anger, no desire to prove anyone wrong. Only quiet dignity. And somehow, that humility impressed Ryan more than every medal hidden inside her wallet. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but no one seemed eager to leave completely. People lingered along the sidewalks, quietly replaying the morning in their minds. Only half an hour earlier, many of them had watched with curiosity, assuming they were witnessing another routine police stop. Now they realized they had witnessed something entirely different. A lesson. The flashing patrol lights were finally switched off. The intersection grew quieter as normal traffic resumed. Children from the Eastwood Community Center cautiously walked across the street again, their laughter gradually replacing the tension that had filled the morning air. Maya Carter bent down beside her bicycle. The old blue frame had tipped onto the pavement during the commotion. She carefully lifted it upright. Her movements remained slow, deliberate. She brushed a little dust from the handlebars before straightening the front wheel. Officer Ryan Miller watched from several feet away. He couldn't stop thinking about everything Captain Walker had revealed. A decorated Army captain. A humanitarian leader. A woman who had saved civilians overseas. A mentor trusted by soldiers and officers alike. Yet none of that had changed the way Maya carried herself. She never mentioned her military career. She never corrected anyone. She never demanded respect. Ryan quietly walked toward her. Captain Carter. Maya looked up with a gentle smile. You don't have to call me captain anymore. Maya is just fine. Ryan hesitated. I owe you an apology. She shook her head before he could continue. No. You owe yourself a lesson. Ryan looked confused. A lesson? Maya nodded. When we wear a uniform, whether it's military or law enforcement, people trust us with something much bigger than authority. She rested one hand on the bicycle seat. They trust us with judgment. The words settled deeply inside him. Officer Ethan Cole stepped closer. I've been thinking about something. Maya smiled. What is it? When you saved that little boy, you never looked afraid. She laughed softly. Oh, I was afraid. Both officers looked surprised. You were. Every single emergency I ever faced made me afraid. She paused for a moment, looking toward the children gathering outside the community center. The difference is, training teaches you not to let fear make your decisions. Silence followed. Captain Walker smiled quietly. He had heard Maya explain leadership years ago in nearly the same words. Nothing about her had changed. She still believed courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing responsibility despite it. A little girl suddenly ran across the sidewalk toward Maya. It was Sophie, the same child who had greeted her earlier that morning. Miss Maya. She threw her arms around Maya's waist. I thought you weren't coming. Maya hugged her gently. I promised I'd be here. You always keep your promises. I try. The children waiting outside the community center began waving excitedly. Some held basketballs. Others carried notebooks. One little boy proudly lifted the bicycle helmet Maya had accidentally left near the curb. I found it. Maya smiled. Thank you, Jacob. Ryan quietly watched the interaction. These children didn't see medals. They didn't know military ranks. To them, she was simply someone they trusted. Someone who always showed up. Captain Walker looked toward the two young officers. Now you understand why respect has nothing to do with appearances. Neither Ryan nor Ethan answered. They simply nodded. Maya slipped on her bicycle helmet. She adjusted the chin strap before placing one foot on the pedal. Then she looked back at the officers one final time. I served because protecting people was my mission. She smiled warmly. It still is. Without another word, she slowly began riding toward the community center. The morning sunlight broke through the clouds, casting long golden rays across the quiet street. Ryan watched until she disappeared through the front gate, surrounded by laughing children. Only then did he fully understand something no academy instructor had ever taught him. The strongest people rarely announce who they are. They simply live in a way that quietly reveals it. If this moment touched your heart, remember that true heroes don't wear their achievements for the world to see, they carry them in. The way they treat others every single day, ***. The front entrance of the Eastwood Community Center buzzed with laughter once again. Children hurried inside carrying basketballs, backpacks, and sketchbooks, while volunteers arranged tables for the morning leadership workshop. The tension that had gripped Jefferson Avenue only minutes earlier had slowly dissolved into ordinary life. Yet for officers Ryan Miller and Ethan Cole, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Neither man had returned to the patrol vehicle. Instead, they stood quietly beside Captain James Walker, watching Maya Carter lock her bicycle to the familiar rack outside the community center. Several children surrounded her immediately. One girl proudly showed Maya a drawing she had finished. Another boy tugged gently on her sleeve. "Miss Maya, can you still teach us first aid today?" Maya smiled. "Of course. I made a promise." The children cheered. Ryan watched the scene unfold with growing disbelief. This wasn't someone trying to impress people. This wasn't someone performing for cameras. She was simply living the same way she had throughout the entire morning. Patient. Calm. Present. Captain Walker folded his arms. "You know why I recognized her immediately?" Ryan looked over. Walker smiled. "Because years ago, she saved one of my officers." Ryan blinked. "What happened?" "It was during a joint emergency response exercise." Walker looked toward Maya, remembering. A fuel truck exploded near a collapsed warehouse. Everyone focused on the fire. But Captain Carter noticed one young officer trapped beneath falling debris. She reached him before anyone else. Ethan listened carefully. "Was she injured?" Walker nodded. "A fractured shoulder. Burns on one arm." And she refused medical treatment until every civilian had been evacuated. Ryan lowered his eyes. The woman he had questioned because of an old bicycle had once risked her own life for strangers. Walker continued quietly. "She received a commendation." "You know what she said during the ceremony?" Ryan shook his head. "The medal belongs to everyone who stood beside me." Walker smiled faintly. "She never accepted credit alone." Across the courtyard, Maya helped a young boy tie his bicycle helmet correctly. She knelt beside him, adjusting the strap beneath his chin. "There. Now you're ready." The boy grinned. "I look like a real rider." "You look like someone who rides safely." The surrounding children laughed. Ryan felt something uncomfortable settle in his chest. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was humility. For the first time since joining the police department, he realized how easily appearances had shaped his decisions. He had seen an old bicycle, simple clothes, a black woman traveling alone. Without realizing it, his mind had begun writing a story before a single conversation had taken place. Captain Walker seemed to read his thoughts. "Ryan, every officer carries 2 pieces of equipment." Ryan looked at him. Walker tapped the badge on his uniform. "This one." Then gently touched his temple. "And this one. The badge gives you authority, but your judgment determines whether you deserve it." Those words stayed with Ryan. Officer Ethan slowly approached Maya. She had just finished helping another child organize sports equipment. "Miss Carter." She turned with her familiar warm smile. "Yes, officer. I wanted to thank you." She looked surprised. "For what?" "For reminding us. That experience doesn't always announce itself." Maya smiled softly. "My grandmother used to say something." Ethan waited. The strongest tree doesn't spend its life telling everyone how deep its roots are. Ryan joined them. I'll remember today. Maya looked directly at him. I hope you remember tomorrow. Ryan understood exactly what she meant. Character wasn't tested on extraordinary days. It was tested during ordinary encounters with ordinary people. A little girl suddenly grabbed Maya's hand. Miss Maya, our class is waiting. Maya laughed. I suppose duty calls. She looked back at the officers. It was nice meeting both of you. Ryan smiled. I think it was more important meeting you. Maya simply nodded. Then she walked through the doors of the community center surrounded by laughing children. The sunlight reflected across the glass entrance as the doors quietly closed behind her. Ryan stood silently for a long moment. He had started the morning believing he was conducting a routine stop. Instead, he had met a leader who never needed to mention her rank, a soldier who no longer wore a uniform, and a woman whose greatest strength had nothing to do with military training. It was the quiet dignity she carried long after the uniform was gone. The story spread across Washington, D.C. far faster than Maya Carter ever imagined. Ironically, it wasn't the dramatic bicycle stop that people shared. It wasn't the flashing police lights. It wasn't even the moment she sprinted into traffic to save a frightened little boy. The video that captured everyone's attention lasted less than 2 minutes. It showed a young black woman calmly answering difficult questions, helping a child, smiling at 2 officers who had misunderstood her, and quietly riding away without demanding recognition. Within days, local news stations called it one of the city's most inspiring stories of the year. Community organizations invited Maya to speak. Veterans groups asked her to attend ceremonies. Several television networks requested interviews. She politely declined every invitation. Life, in her mind, had not changed. She still woke before sunrise, still rode her old blue bicycle through the same neighborhoods, still carried first aid supplies, sports equipment, and notebooks inside the faded gray backpack, still believed that actions spoke far louder than publicity. 1 week later, Captain James Walker received permission from the department to organize a community outreach event at the Eastwood Community Center. It wasn't intended as a press conference. It wasn't about repairing public image. It was about bringing officers and neighborhood families together. Ryan Miller and Ethan Cole volunteered immediately. They arrived early that Saturday morning. Instead of patrol uniforms, they wore simple department polo shirts. Children immediately challenged them to basketball games. Parents smiled cautiously. The atmosphere felt relaxed, hopeful. Near noon, Maya finished leading a bicycle safety workshop for nearly 30 children. She was putting helmets back into storage when Ryan approached. He looked noticeably nervous. Miss Carter. She turned and smiled. Good morning, Ryan. He took a slow breath. I've been wanting to say something. She waited patiently. When we first stopped you, I thought I was evaluating a situation. He lowered his eyes. But I realize now. I was evaluating a person before I even knew her. Silence settled between them. Ryan continued. I'm sorry. I judged you far too quickly. I've replayed that morning every day. Maya looked at him quietly. There was no anger in her eyes, only understanding. She smiled gently. Ryan, do you know why I accepted your apology before you even said the words? He looked confused. You did. She nodded. The moment you chose to learn instead of defend yourself. You had already begun changing. Ryan stood speechless. Ethan stepped forward. I've started doing something different during every traffic stop. Maya smiled. What is it? I ask one extra question. She tilted her head. What question? He answered softly. Is there anything you'd like me to know before we continue? Maya's smile grew wider. How has that worked? Ethan laughed quietly. I've learned more about people in 1 week than I did during my first 2 years on patrol. Captain Walker, who had been listening nearby, smiled proudly. That's how trust begins. Not with speeches, with better conversations. The afternoon continued with laughter, bicycle races, and first aid demonstrations. Children practiced bandaging toy bears. Officers joined relay races. Parents shared homemade food beneath large oak trees. For several hours, uniforms disappeared. Badges disappeared. Titles disappeared. Only people remained. As the event came to an end, Ryan walked beside Maya toward the bicycle rack. You know, I used to think respect came from authority. Maya unlocked her bicycle. And now? Ryan smiled. I think respect begins with listening. Maya nodded. I couldn't have said it better myself. She placed one foot on the pedal before looking back. The strongest leaders aren't the ones who speak first. They're the ones willing to understand first. Ryan extended his hand. This time, not as an officer, simply as another human being. Maya shook it warmly. Neither needed another apology. Neither needed another explanation. Some lessons could never be taught inside classrooms or police academies. They could only be learned through humility. As Maya rode slowly away beneath the golden afternoon sun, children waved enthusiastically from across the park. She waved back with the same quiet smile. No medals. No headlines. No uniform. Just a woman who had never stopped serving others. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who believes that true respect begins with listening, and that the strongest people are often the ones who choose compassion over pride. 6 months later, autumn returned to Washington, D.C., painting the city in warm shades of amber and gold. Maple leaves drifted lazily across quiet sidewalks as the crisp morning air carried the familiar scent of fresh coffee from neighborhood cafes. Jefferson Avenue looked exactly as it had on the morning everything changed. The same crosswalk. The same bicycle lane. The same community center standing proudly at the end of the block. But something invisible had changed. The people. Every weekday, just after 8 o'clock, Maya Carter still rode her old blue bicycle through the neighborhood. She never replaced it. Friends had offered to buy her a new carbon fiber road bike after the story spread online. One local business even offered to sponsor her with a top-of-the-line electric bicycle. Maya thanked them all, then politely declined. This one still works, she would say with a smile. And it reminds me that purpose has never depended on what I ride. That Thursday morning, children waiting outside the Eastwood Community Center spotted her from half a block away. Miss Maya. Their excited voices echoed across the street. Maya laughed and rang the small silver bell on her handlebars. Good morning, team. A group of children ran toward the bicycle rack, eager to help carry sports equipment and backpacks inside. One little boy proudly held open the community center door. Ladies first. Maya smiled. Now that's good manners. The boy grinned. You taught us. As she stepped inside, a familiar police cruiser slowly rolled past the building. Officer Ryan Miller was driving. Officer Ethan Cole sat in the passenger seat. Ryan noticed the children gathered around Maya. He smiled. There she is. Ethan looked through the window. Still riding the same bike. Ryan nodded. And still changing lives. Without hesitation, Ryan slowed the patrol vehicle. He rolled down the window. Good morning, Miss Carter. Maya turned toward the street. Her warm smile appeared instantly. Good morning, officers. Ryan lifted 2 fingers in a respectful salute. No problems today. Maya laughed softly. I was hoping for a quiet ride. You've earned one. The children looked curiously between Maya and the officers. One little girl whispered, You know the police? Maya smiled. I know some very good people. Ryan heard her answer. It stayed with him long after the patrol car continued down the street. Months earlier, he would have remembered Maya as the woman he had stopped on a bicycle. Now, he remembered her as the woman who had quietly transformed the way he served his community. Later that afternoon, Captain James Walker visited the community center carrying a small wooden frame. I thought this belonged here. Maya looked inside. It wasn't a medal. It wasn't a newspaper article. It was a simple photograph taken during the neighborhood bicycle safety event. Children laughed while riding bicycles. Police officers rode beside them. Parents applauded from the sidewalk. In the center of the picture stood Maya. Not leading. Not standing apart. Simply smiling among everyone else. Walker pointed toward the photograph. I've seen a lot of awards during my career. He paused. But this This is what service actually looks like. Maya quietly looked at the photograph for several seconds. Then she smiled. I hope the children remember this day. Walker nodded. They will. And so will the officers. As evening settled over Washington, Maya locked the community center for the night. She climbed onto her bicycle one last time. Golden sunlight stretched across the empty street as a gentle breeze carried autumn leaves through the air. She began pedaling toward home. Not quickly, not dramatically, just steadily, purposefully, the same way she always had. Behind her, the laughter of children slowly faded into the distance. Ahead of her, the road disappeared beneath the warm glow of the setting sun. She never looked back. She didn't need to. Because true honor isn't found in medals, titles, or recognition. It's found in the quiet choices a person makes every single day, especially when no one is watching. And somewhere behind that disappearing silhouette, an old blue bicycle rolled forward beneath a sky painted with gold, carrying a woman who had never stopped serving others, not because she wore a uniform, but because kindness had always been the strongest part of who she was. The end.